Welcome back, everybody. I feel like this is a reunion. Linz and
Yes.
I have been on separate schedules in separate parts of the world, just doing amazing things, but not together. And that makes me always so sad. And so it
Me
is,
too.
I feel like it is one of the best days ever because we get to sit and even that we're not together, but we are at least in the same town. And I get to
Yes.
see her beautiful face. And we're excited to come back to you guys together and check in. And I'm so appreciative to Linz for holding down the fort on its time for the last couple weeks. So yeah, it's just such a wonderful experience to be back together and to be able to talk about some really important stuff again.
Me too. Me too. I love all the stuff you've been out there cranking on as well. So let's make sure we mention a little bit of that too in the context of our topic today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think, for those that don't know what's going on, there's been travel, there's been kids back to school, there's been aging parents, there's new careers, there's just great stuff happening. And it is our goal to make sure every week you hear from one, hopefully both of us, because this is pivotal and important to us to continue. But yeah, there's been some cool stuff going on, which will hopefully expand all of us and bring us cool things to share.
Yes. It's exciting. Excited for you.
Well, today I want to go back and talk about something that we've touched base with. We've touched base on a couple times on its time. We've done our own podcast about it. We had the amazing and talented Dr. Wendy Troxel on about it. But I just feel like I keep getting questions about sleep.
Yes. I mean, especially right now, right? Like we've all come through this super busy and somewhat often unstructured season of play and balancing work and family if you've got family dynamics during summer. And then you have this radical gear shift into structure again if you're in the family dynamic of back to school. But even if you're not, you're in the dynamic of holiday season starting to pick up or Q4 planning in your business context. And so it's sort of this like jarring realization that you shift into structure. And one of the things that often goes away with calendars that are overloaded is sleep.
Yeah. And I think there's a natural cycle to that too. Our days are starting to get shorter again. So even our natural rhythms are starting to change and that can definitely play havoc on sleep. We're going to change our clocks again pretty soon, which we know plays havoc on sleep. So, but I wanted to start back and I think I was really fortunate enough. My new position at Canyon Ranch, I get to go and have a lot of fun. I'm helping
Yes.
facilitate a lot of our programs. And so 2 weeks ago, I was really, really fortunate to facilitate our Empower program, which is our kind of menopause program that we run out of our Lenox resort. And awesome group of women, was so fun to be there and so much talk about sleep. And
Yes.
so it just made me really invigorated to have this conversation again. And we were talking about sleep there through the lens of menopause. And I think, it's really important, I think, to revisit that these sleep alterations for us as women, they can start in our mid 30s and into our early 40s. And it's often the first symptom we see of this kind of midlife hormonal transition.
I love the priority on kind of this core pillar. Yeah, we have our 5 pillars. This is number 2 or 3, depending upon where we are with movement at the time. But the work that you're doing, with the expertise at Canyon Ranch, leading the women's health initiatives and thinking about the content there that's highest impact, and to have this one hit your screen again, it's one of those reminders that like just because we talk about it one time doesn't mean people have had a chance to digest it and implement things that are helping them. And so revisiting it now, it just feels like an opportune time to get back to the really simple reminders of the science of why sleep matters. Because I think we all sometimes need a rationale about why we care about investing to do something. It's like we need the reason why reminded, and then the practical how to do the things that could actually be effective for you, because everybody's sleep dynamic is different.
Yeah. So, real quick, let's stay in this menopause lens for a minute and talk about kind of what's happening in this very early perimenopause window. And
Mhm.
then as we get closer and into menopause, kind of why we see this order of sleep changes and difficulty that we see. So, just to kind of remind everybody, progesterone is made naturally when we ovulate. So, when we ovulate, we have that egg release, that corpus luteum around that egg. When it breaks down, that's what is creating our body's progesterone. So as we get closer to menopause and closer to midlife, we even if we're still having periods, we're not ovulating as regularly as we might have been earlier. And
Mhm.
so we start to see this variation in progesterone is kind of the first sign is that, okay, ovulated last month, maybe didn't ovulate this month, maybe didn't ovulate next month. And without that progesterone, our nervous system gets a little irritated, and sleep can be one of the first signs of that. So it could be that, gosh, I slept great this month and now I just don't know what's going on. And that can sometimes be an indicator that maybe you're starting to have more what we call anovulatory or not ovulating cycles. We can see sleep and kind of irritation as the first symptom of that, or
Mhm.
lack of sleep, I should say, trouble sleeping.
Yes, and I think, when we were first looking into this impact of sleep and, kinda how it cycles through our changing cycles, one of the things that was obvious to me after you had sort of described the underlying hormone impact is the behaviors that I might have been doing in my day-to-day life were fine when I had progesterone to help on board, right? Like, and for me, I always use the example of, like, eating late or if you have a glass of wine before you go to bed or whatever. My body could deal with it then, and then when I started to lose progesterone, it was like, "Okay, what's happening now?" And I was trying to learn how to decouple the hormonal impact and could I supplement there versus the lifestyle levers, which even with hormone supplements may not be able to really bring on board anymore, if you want to the good night's sleep.
Yeah. And I think that's important because as I've been talking about this in more groups recently and listening to questions, I feel like, and as a healthcare provider, I feel like we really focus on hormone therapy as estrogen, and the progesterone gets thrown in there as its buddy to prevent estrogen
Right.
related
Right.
problems. Basically, if you have a uterus, you need
Answer,
progesterone.
yeah.
But progesterone actually has some benefits in and of itself. And so I don't want people to forget that. And some women start on progesterone for years before they need estrogen added in,
Yeah.
just for this kind of sleep phase. So we lose our progesterone or it gets erratic first. I'm drawing my invisible graph with my pen
Yes. I see
sitting
it, I see
here.
it.
And so that can lead to some insomnia, that can lead to some irritation, and also increase our anxiety and depression, which we already know we're at higher risk for through this
Yeah,
transition.
yeah.
And then our estrogen starts to go on its massive either roller coaster for a little while and then decline. And again, that is going to really reach into a lot of the cognitive side effects of our loss of estrogen, which again can show up as anxiety, can show up as depression, which we both know impacts sleep. We start to see an increase in restless leg syndrome. We
Yes.
also, when we lose that thermo control, that our temperature control in our brains, we start to see hot flashes and night sweats. So you can see how all of these things, and then the one that you are always so good at reminding us that I think is so overlooked is the increase in sleep apnea that we see in women.
Yes. Yes, and, whenever we talk also just about this progesterone and the impact on mood and anxiety and stress relief, I can't help but be reminded too of we did IVF, and so we did a lot of progesterone shots, and I can remember actually feeling the impact of all that progesterone hormone in the system, and so you get a chance to feel that sometime in your life, and then you can feel it being pulled away. So all of those things like sleep apnea and new symptoms that emerge because of this change in the hormonal equation, I think giving yourself the grace to realize that some of these things are just they're going to be a cycle, they're going to be a roller coaster, and some of these things are a permanent shift in your landscape. And how do you build support systems knowing that?
Yeah. And I think one of the hardest things is, and we're going to talk about kind of both lifestyle levers and pharmacologic agents or prescription agents that you can use to help with this, and kind of how and why they work. But I think is like, when do you pull that trigger?
Hmm.
When do you and where do you start? And I think there's no right answer, and there's no one way to do it, which always makes the discussion a little more complicated. So I think if we can kind of lay out a timeline and a toolkit for everyone, I think that, first is to notice,
Hmm.
gosh, am I not sleeping well? Is it one night here, one night there? Are there associated factors like, did you eat later? Did you maybe have a drink or an extra drink? Or, was there something in your daily routine that changed that you can say, I did that last night. I didn't sleep very well, but I don't do that routinely and I'm sleeping fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And
I
so,
think if you go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead.
So I said I I think if we start there,
Mhm.
then you can say, or is it, to your point, is this becoming more of a consistent problem? Am I seeing a consistent pattern, a consistent change in my overall sleep kind of week after week?
And I think, when we started this, it's like understanding the why, like why does sleep deprivation or not even sleep deprivation, less than the target amount of time your body needs to recover with sleep, getting that on a consistent basis. Why does that matter? Right. So I think you do a great job kind of just giving the succinct, these are the reasons why you should bother to track your sleep to see if it's a trend or a one off. This is why you should care about trying to find the right intervention if you're noticing that it's a trend. Like, what are the couple of salient, other than, we know we just feel low energy, we're in a bad mood, but what are some of the other salient physiological impacts of, you know, inconsistent, nourishing sleep over time?
So I think, we can go back to that idea that, Peter Attia so eloquently and simply described as these four horsemen of longevity, right? If we go back to heart disease, metabolic disease, neurodegenerative disease, and
Yeah.
cancer. If we're not sleeping, we're increasing the risk of all four of those. I mean, just to keep it super simple, right? That we need sleep and we need good, high quality, consistent sleep to lower risk factors on all four of those,
Okay.
in all four of those areas. I think a fifth would be, again, the quality of our relationships as well can really suffer if we're not sleeping for multiple reasons. So I would add that fifth into those four major pillars is that, we know that that is also a key driver of longevity. And we know that our relationships suffer if we're not adequately getting the rest that we need.
Yeah. And, I think one of the other realities that you've highlighted is everybody's probably gone through a period where they had low sleep, in their earlier life phases. Maybe if you decided to have children, that's a one that's familiar to many people. If you decided to do graduate work, that's another time or early on in a professional career. But the reality of this life phase shift is we can't recover from the same level of reduced sleep the same way we can't recover from the same exercise that we did in our 20s. So it is a reality. It's not that we can't thrive as much as we thrived or even more, but you can't assume the same bounce back. And so you have to give yourself that grace to really take it seriously and take it as a marathon in that sleep game.
Right. So let's talk about some strategies of one is awareness, I think is the first thing. And whether you and how do we use data to look at this? And so, there are many ways to track your sleep. You can use, from pretty simple of how do I feel in the morning, which is probably still the most validated metric used to track sleep.
Totally agree. Yep. Yep.
But to, really fancy mattress pads, etcetera. And I think there is like any data set, there is a place where it is helpful, and then there is for some people a place where it becomes an additional source of anxiety, an additional source of stress. And so I think, understanding if you're thinking, gosh, I'm really not sleeping well, is that really true? First of all, sometimes we don't think we're sleeping well and we actually are getting really good sleep, which could be helpful for us, right? We can cross that off the worry list.
Right.
Or more often than not, the converse is true that, you know what, we're not really sleeping well and we're seeing it day after day, week after week. Okay, it's not a one off. Let's dive to the next level and really kind of try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And, I think early on you gave us great parameters on what do we mean sleep well. So there's like, the ones we all know, like 7 to 9 hours. Okay, so don't sleep too much, which is a rare thing, but sometimes on the weekend, maybe that's what's going on. Don't sleep too much, but more often it is sleep enough, so 7 to 9 hours. I think the other rule of thumb that you gave me early on, which I so value, is you have to get some of that sleep before midnight, to get the
Hmm.
right cycles of sleeps. It's not just 7 hours. And this is one we always joke about as a challenge with teenagers 7 hours starting at like 10 o'clock at night, which is hard. And for a lot of people, different life phases. And then there was also the idea of making sure that you think about how you wake up so that you're getting the best REM early. And so there's some of those building blocks that have really helped me without even using the aura or whatever to just say, if I'm going for sleep, what am I targeting? What is quote good,
Right. Right. And if you're going to, those are great. I love starting with things that don't take any tech, that
Yeah.
don't, that really are just really basic, which is some of our behaviors. So again, I mean, and this has shown up again and again in the research is consistency is key.
Mhm.
So, if you were at 10 p.m. to a 5 or 6 a.m. or like, that's really, maybe you sleep till 6 or 7 on the weekend, but like we try not to shift that again and again and again. And, again, I think teenagers are the perfect example. It's really hard,
Yeah.
but like consistency is key. And it's not only key to getting quality sleep, it's key to maintaining good sleep hygiene. So not only you can use it in both if you're having a problem, like
Mhm.
that's one of the easiest things. I say easy, none of this is necessarily easy. It's one of probably the most important things to implement is that consistent sleep and wake time, because to your point, Linz, exactly, is your body gets used to that. And so those first 4 hours then become really critical. And that's your repair. That's where your growth hormones coming in. And your muscles are really getting repaired and renewed for all the work that you did all day. And then that second half of the night is where we see our increased amount of REM sleep. And that's where we're solidifying learnings and making moving things from short term memory into the long term memory parts of our brain.
Mhm.
And so they're both equally critical for all of the benefits of getting a good night's sleep, which is again, preventing heart disease, preventing cancer, preventing neurodegenerative disease, preventing metabolic disease. And in the meantime, that washing machine system in our brains working the whole time. So,
Yes.
so again, great points. I think, so we have this idea of insomnia, which is like we can't sleep through the night. And sometimes it's difficulty falling asleep. It can be difficulty staying asleep. And I get a lot of questions about when do I need to reach for a medication?
Mhm.
And I think that that's a really personal decision. And I think it is one that takes a little bit of an investigation with your healthcare provider.
Mhm.
So, for some women, that can be a discussion about is it time to start some hormone therapy? And again, that's going to depend on your symptomatology. So, are you just kind of anxious and maybe a little irritated and having trouble sleeping? That might be a great place to start with some progesterone. Are you really having hot flashes or temperature instability and that's really bothersome and waking you up? That's probably a better case for either combined therapy or estrogen only if you don't have a uterus. So I think it can be a very personalized discussion. I think there are people who maybe it's not the right time to start hormone therapy, or maybe hormone therapy is not indicated for. And there's been, I feel like there's a lot of judgment around using an SSRI, an antidepressant, or an SNRI, which is a different type of antidepressant, anti anxiety medication. And there's now two that are totally approved for sleep purposes. And I think Paxil is probably the one we most commonly see prescribed. And my wish to everyone is that people get the help they need and the judgment goes away.
Right.
And so
Right.
if that's the therapy that really is indicated and is helping you, there's no shame in that because
Yes.
the benefits can be outstanding. And so you see these different things on social media and stuff that they're like, "Oh, women are misdiagnosed and they're giving antidepressants when they're just having hormone. It's a hormone issue." Well, it might be a hormone issue, but maybe hormones aren't the right treatment plan for that person, and so they shouldn't feel that they're not being seen or heard and not being offered these other types of therapies that we know are
Right.
effective.
Right. So I love the conversation with your medical advisor. And I think one of the things we love to kind of advocate for women to do is to go in with a full set of options well understood by themselves. So then go ask the right questions, right? So what you put on offer is, hey, hormone therapy for sure is a tool in the toolkit, and it may be appropriate, may not be, but know about it and have it on your question list. Pharmaceuticals might be the right answer. There are some over-the-counter supplements. Magnesium can be a game changer for a lot of people. Magnesium glycinate, I always say it incorrectly, but because of the muscle cramps, that sometimes wake up people
Mhm.
after the menopause. And then holy basil can be an option. So there are a set of things that are over the counter, that are pharma, that are hormone, and to go in and ask and test and learn. Use that prototyping habit mentality in this arena too to test and learn what's the right thing for you. And by the way, have the patience to realize it may not be the right thing in 6 months because our bodies are continuing to change, and that doesn't mean you failed with your solution. It means your
Right.
solution is iterative.
Yeah. And then, the things you always remind me of that I don't want to leave out of this conversation are just all the lifestyle and environmental tools that we have as well. And I know we have talked about this again and again and again, but again, once again,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
importance of having a wind down routine in the evening and giving yourself the ability to decompress. So, whether that's a bath, whether that's journaling, whether that's a few minutes of gratitude, all of these things are very powerful tools to help end your day and prepare your body for sleep and your mind for sleep. And so, not to underestimate that. In addition, we talk about the environment of your room: cold, dark, quiet. Like, we can say it again and again and again: cold, dark, quiet. And I know you're a huge fan of white noise, and you've gotten me hooked on white noise. We actually bought the white noise machines that are in the rooms in Canyon Ranch because it's, like, awesome. I sleep so well whenever I'm at one of our properties. I'm like, "Why
Yeah,
is this?"
'cause it's the world-class property, that's why.
That might be it, but
Michelin
it's
star
cold, it's
property.
dark, and it's quiet.
Yes, yeah,
It's cold, dark, quiet, and
yes.
this beautiful white noise machine's there, and I'm like, it's like a magic cocoon all of a sudden.
Yes, yes, and so, I love the white noise, and I love the eye mask, and, I love having multiple ones of those so that you take that eye mask, the same type with you whenever you travel, because your body then just knows. Like, when I put the mask on, my body immediately is like, "Oh, it's sleeping time." And I can feel it. I could put it on right here, and I'd be like, "Oh, it's sleeping time." I used it on the plane when I was doing the, overseas travel, and just, again, like, the physical cue to my face is like, "Oh, no." So I think those kind of little things like the eye mask, the white noise. The other one that I've had success with, to me, it's a little too much effort, so I'm inconsistent with it. But if you love it, you'd be consistent. Is the aromatherapy? The little
Mhm,
diffuser. There's a
mhm.
lot of science around how the scent of smell and aromatherapy can help you sleep. I just am already sleeping all right with the other stuff I have, and it takes a little effort to do aromatherapy at night, so I don't do it, but that could be one for people that you can also take on the road, the little ones.
Absolutely. And then I would also say, especially as women who don't present in the same way as men do when it comes to sleep apnea, I think
Yes.
we often don't have the same at-risk body habitus. So, we worry about men who are overweight with this thick neck circumference or these big necks,
And snoring and all that,
and they're
yeah.
snoring and they're gasping and it's disruptive to their bed partners, all of these things. Women can present very differently. Some
Yeah.
daytime fatigue and sleepiness, headache is often really common. Some of this kind of brain fog, moodiness that is multifactorial in this time of life for women. But all of those can be signs that there could be some symptoms of sleep apnea. And I think that that's it's important for women and men to recognize
Yes.
that that actually might be a problem for women. And if you have a bed partner, see if they've noticed anything that you may not be aware of. Like, are you waking up? Are you jerking in bed more often? Are there any of these other things that your body might be waking up because it's not getting enough oxygen, even if you don't regain full consciousness? Because that, again, is a problem that we can treat non pharmacologically. And it's really important to our overall health. We know undiagnosed sleep apnea can contribute to all of those disease factors that we just mentioned. And so it's a really important thing to have evaluated if you're having any of those signs or symptoms.
Yeah. The other one that I think was, I would kinda just write it off as like, "Oh, I just was when I was sleeping," is you might feel like dry throat, open mouth dry throat because 'cause you're not actually able to breathe through your nose and, your mouth is kind of open and your jaw is forward, and so that can also be like, you're like, "Am I a little sick? Am I feeling a little bit of a cold?" And it's
Mm,
really you're sleeping with your mouth open because you've got that mild sleep apnea.
yeah, that's a great call out. That's a great call out. So we just wanted to take a few minutes just to kind of revisit all of this because it's so critically important. And it is important for our longstanding cognitive health, emotional health, and physical health. We know that women have increased risks of Alzheimer's over men. We know that's not all attributed to greater life expectancy. And we are learning more and more that not prioritizing sleep and not, I'm going to use the word aggressively, really trying different types of therapeutic interventions to improve our sleep or maintain our sleep is really critically important to minimizing our risk as much as possible.
Well, I love revisiting the importance of rest and recharge. We'll talk about it in another episode, but keeping in mind the idea of recovery as well as sleep. So as you're mapping out your week and your movement strategy and your life and your social balance, to have a recovery moment in your waking time as well as your recovery and recharge with effective sleep.
No, I think recovery is so important. And, the one thing that we struggle with is like, when do you sacrifice sleep or recovery in the name of movement?
Yes, we get that
And
question a lot, like, what do we do? Take a wake
a
up an hour
lot,
or don't
right?
work out.
Yeah. When do you take a day off? When do you not, if you're a morning exerciser, when do you say, I need an extra hour of sleep today? I'm not going to get up.
Mhm.
Or even if I get up, I'm not going to go exercise. I'm just going to have this morning to kind of recover and recharge and not kind of jump right into my day. I think it's a hard question to answer.
Well, and it's one that you can answer kind of in the balance, and even if you just use a week as your barometer, like, just look at it in the course of the 7 days. It's not a big deal to miss, one workout to get that extra sleep, and the flip side of it is you might need to rally because you haven't had a workout, so you gotta get a little bit of that in there too. So it's the rhythm and the way to architect it with a sense of flow and timeline and not a binary must do every time you make that decision.
Yeah. And I also think, is there another type of movement on those days that you can substitute in? Is it a walk? Is it a
So
yoga class? Is it something that maybe you don't do in your regular routine, but that allows yourself to still participate in some movement, but to have that kind of more restorative session instead of a session where maybe you're doing your hit or your heavy weights or things that are just more
yeah.
maybe or maybe not more strenuous, but a different type of strenuous.
Yeah. Or, I always love that invitation for exercise snacks, right? Like, is it a day maybe where you're gonna get your movement
Mhm.
goal done with 10 different exercise snacks instead of trying to carve out the time chunk that day? Awesome.
Absolutely. So let's just, as we're winding down here, let's just quick hits our top behavior, revisit really quickly kind of the more pharmacologic, whether it's over the counter or prescription, and then recovery. So let's just walk through really quickly our kind of top, I would say, counting in my head real quick, our top six kind of lifestyle interventions for a good night's sleep. You can start and I'll finish and we'll see where we get to.
Well, I have to start my favorites, which is just having the lightweight portable ways to make dark quiet happen. So, eye mask, I still do the mouth tape to try to help me with my sleep apnea and the white noise because it could go with me consistently no matter where I am sleeping.
Okay. So, number two, I'm going to do consistency. Go to bed, get up at the same time, day in and day out.
3, I would say, is wind down routine. And I know when you and I talk about it, we have kind of a best demonstrated practice of 3, 2, 1. Like, now stop your work, stop eating and drinking 3 hours before, stop your stressful work 2 hours before, shut down, highly energizing screens an hour before. And the reality is we can't do that every single night. So just because you haven't done 3, 2, 1, you still can give yourself 5 minutes of mindful wind down to help tell your brain and body that it's time to rest.
So, to keep recapping, after Lindsley was talking about a wind down routine, we've talked about environment, cold, dark, quiet as much as you can. And then just being cognizant if things that used to may not impact your sleep are starting to have a negative impact. Things like when you're having caffeine during the day, things like alcohol or meal timing, or even what's in your meals. So, I know there's good data around as we get older, our ability to digest red meat often can impact sleep. And then obviously alcohol can play a role. If we're going to switch gears and go into additional levers that we can pull, we talked about kind of pharmacologic prescription agents. So, this is our hormone replacement therapy. These can be dedicated sleep medications. These can also be things like antidepressants that all have been shown clinically to really help. And so, just being able to ask really great questions to your healthcare provider about what the different options are is really important because all three can impact sleep differently depending on what's causing the sleep problem and may or may not be indicated depending on other health issues and situations. And then lastly, kind of our supplements. Lindsley talked about magnesium. There's two different types of magnesium. So we have magnesium threonate that gets in, crosses our blood-brain barrier and can make us sleepy, can also cause some interesting dreams. And then we have magnesium that stays more peripheral, and that can really help with our muscle aches and help our muscles relax a little bit at the end of the day. And there's many other supplements that are dedicated to sleep. I think there's the most data behind magnesium. Melatonin can be very helpful if you're having time related issues, so adjusting your body clocks, and it can be really useful for jet lag and travel. So, we hope this was a great little review for you for sleep and kind of tried to go over the questions that I'm still getting most often as I'm meeting with different groups of women around the country. And just wanted to kind of share a little update, and we will talk to you next time. Take care.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us here today. If you liked what you heard and you got some tips on how to live better right now and for the long haul, please help us reach more midlife women. Please share and rate and like this show, and we can't wait to continue the dialogue with you on our next episode. Until then, thank you. It's time.